Living inside the system. Living inside the system. A story for those who have noticed, but rarely say it out loud. Rich isn't angry. That's the first thing to understand. He isn't looking for someone to blame, and he isn't asking to be rescued. What he's experiencing isn't burnout in the modern sense, and it isn't despair. It's something quieter, heavier, and more difficult to articulate. It's the fatigue that comes after a lifetime of compliance. Rich has lived long enough to see multiple economic cycles, cultural promises, and institutional assurances rise and fall. He did what was expected, he adapted, he worked, he planned, he played by the rules. And over time, something became impossible to ignore. The rules were never designed to protect the people playing the game. This realization didn't arrive suddenly. It accumulated slowly, through systems that claimed to offer choice while quietly narrowing it, through policies framed as protection that functioned more like containment, through an economy that increasingly asked individuals not how they wanted to live, but which losses they were willing to absorb. At some point, Rich recognized a hard truth. In modern structured society, agency has largely been replaced by loss mitigation. You don't choose how to live. You choose how much to lose, how fast, and in which category. Financially, temporally, psychologically. This isn't freedom poorly implemented as it's coercion normalized. Participation is mandatory. Exit is punished. And choice exists only inside a system you didn't design, can't meaningfully influence, and are legally required to inhabit. Selecting between constrained options isn't consent. It's compliance with paperwork. What unsettles Rich isn't just the economics. It's what this structure does to human experience. If life becomes primarily about minimizing extraction, where does meaning live? Where is care? Where is dignity? Where is stewardship? Where is the idea that life should be oriented toward something more than efficiency, throughput, and profitability? At some point, Rich realized he wasn't simply frustrated with the system, he was grieving. Grieving the quiet erosion of values that once centered life itself, community, responsibility beyond profit, connection to land, continuity between generations. He began to see humanity not as progressing, but consuming, capable of extraordinary awareness, yet structured around accelerating its own depletion. Not out of cruelty, out of design. Rich doesn't believe people can simply live adjacent to the system. That idea feels dishonest. When participation is compulsory, adjacency is an illusion. You live inside the system, or you are punished economically, legally, or socially. And yet, Rich refuses one thing. He refuses internal assimilation. He will not pretend that choosing among losses is freedom. He will not confuse survival with endorsement. He will not accept extraction as the natural order of life. What Rich wants, more than reform, more than justice, more than solutions, is externalization. He wants these observations spoken aloud, shared, grounded communally, not to persuade, not to inflame, but to affirm that those who notice these patterns are not broken, cynical, or failing to adapt. They are simply seeing clearly. This story is not a call to revolt. It isn't a manifesto, and it isn't a solution. It's a recognition that clarity itself has value, that witnessing matters, that naming reality, calmly, without hysteria, is a form of resistance in a world that depends on confusion, distraction, and silence. Rich doesn't believe large extractive systems will reconcile with humanity voluntarily. Historically, they never do. They fracture, exhaust, or collapse under their own weight. What survives those eras isn't dominance. It's memory, restraint, care, and people who refuse to let loss accounting become the definition of life. This story is for anyone who has ever thought, I see what's happening, I just didn't know how to say it. If that's you, then you were already part of this conversation. A reflective invitation for discussion, not debate. If you recognize yourself in this story, not in anger, but in quiet clarity, consider these questions. There are no right answers, only honest ones. 1. Recognition. When did you first realize that choice had narrowed into deciding which losses you could absorb? 2. Practical grounding. Inside systems we cannot opt out of. What realistic, local actions have you found that preserve dignity, care, or meaning without pretending the system is fair? 3. Life-centered values. What parts of life still feel genuinely life-affirming to you? Nature, craft, care, community, and how do you protect them from being reduced to transactions? 4. Stewardship over progress. If progress has become indistinguishable from extraction, what does responsible stewardship look like for people, land, and future generations? Discussion guidance. This space is for reflection, not argument. Disagreement is welcome. Dismissiveness is not. Speak from lived experience rather than ideology. The goal is shared clarity and aspirational thinking, not winning.